Hi, I'm Robin Fowler, a lecturer in the College of Engineering at the University of Michigan, and I'm joined by Trevion Henderson, a PhD candidate from the School of Education who I've had the pleasure of working with for almost a year now. We're excited to present some work on power dynamics and team experiences in a first-year engineering context. We want to start by acknowledging that instructors adopt team-based pedagogies for a number of reasons, including both because teamwork can be an end, that is, we see collaboration skills as learning objectives, and because teamwork pedagogies can increase student learning of and identification with other course content. However, we think it's important to acknowledge that teamwork pedagogy can also negatively affect students' experiences in our classes. In particular, there are many diversity, equity, and inclusion related issues that we note on student teams. We've used this iceberg metaphor before to talk about those. There are a set of concerns that many instructors and students might be aware of, but there are also pieces below the waterline, if you will. I'm sure you can think of other concerns to add there too. I've framed those in other presentations as invisible, but as I learn more, I need to problematize that framing. These pieces might feel invisible because we don't go looking for them, and because they might not even be detectable in a single class or with a single experience. The students on a team in which they are happening are sometimes or often not aware of them. It's only when we look at patterns across many teams that these issues might become clear to instructors. It's interesting to me that I usually avoid calling these team experiences sexism or racism or other isms. And one reason might be because those words mean something that we all acknowledge we want to ensure isn't happening in our classes. And some of the experiences under the waterline here are ones that we might struggle to detect or to remedy. But I think part of our message today is that we need to lean into that struggle. Today, we'll be presenting information from qualitative analyses of students and teams in a first-year engineering course. At our institution, students select one of a number of projects. Our teams are groups of 4 to 5 students working together to design, build, test, and communicate about an underwater, remotely operated vehicle. In our class, we intentionally build in a lot of scaffolded teamwork support. Students read information on teamwork-related topics and write short reflections throughout the project. We used to house these reflections through the quiz function of our learning management system, but the Center for Academic Innovation at our institution is now building a teamwork support tool which tailors these lessons for students. 2017 and 2018, Major Sue, then an undergrad teaching one of the course labs, and I tried to better understand how student teams were dividing up work. We analyzed student written reflections on academic orientation and task allocation, and we came up with this model of task division. The model predicts a feed-forward loop in which pre-existing differences in students would be exacerbated by a curriculum that includes a lot of teamwork, like the engineering curriculum at our institution. Gender shows up in a lot of places in the model. The top box captures students as they enter the course with their interests as well as relevant experiences and skills, as well as the lenses through which they view those and even the language they will later use to describe those. Clearly, some of the gender differences here are actual differences between the distributions and the populations. Others are differences in perception only. While the first part led a student to their understanding of the skills that they bring to the team, the academic orientation filter affects what type of task they would choose to tackle. Students who are motivated to build their engineering toolkit over the course of their career, for example, might intentionally volunteer for unfamiliar tasks. Others might be most motivated to earn a grade or build an awesome vehicle and might instead volunteer for tasks they expect to excel at. Consistent with research on academic orientation in other settings, Crystal Farr, Gwen Camacho, and I found that in this class, women are slightly more learning oriented and men are slightly more performance oriented, though the effect size was very small. Most relevant for instructors as we think about team-based pedagogy, though, we actually found a new type of performance avoidance. Sometimes when we talk about women in STEM, we talk about women feeling pressure to perform well as we represent our gender. But women in our context were less performance avoidant as measured by items like that, like I would avoid a task in which I might appear incompetent to others. But instead, we found women were induced to be more performance avoidant by the team environment. Women in our setting responded positively to items like I would avoid taking on a task in which my poor performance might hurt my teammates' grades. In the model, the individual differences plus the filter of a student's academic goals lead each teammate to have particular preferences for tasks they would like to complete. The team still needs to work together to determine who will do what parts of the project. Because my co-instructors and I are concerned about inequities in task allocation in this context, we explicitly address task allocation to class, talking about how a goal of this first year class is to help students build skills and reassuring students that poor prototype performance won't affect their grades. In this context, Trevion Henderson has been conducting an ethnography investigating power dynamics on teams, and he's able to critically reflect on how students frame their experiences, sometimes in sync with and sometimes expanding this model.
I joined Robin's class in the fall of 2019, hoping to study team dynamics broadly, but also how students negotiate ideas, delegate tasks, and make design decisions more specifically. Over the course of a semester long project, I engaged in a critical ethnography of student design teams where I followed three focal teams during their in and out of class meetings. I also conducted one on one interviews in which I revisited particular events over the course of the project to get a sense of how students made sense of their experiences. Finally, because there were 9 other teams in the class, I'm also analyzing quantitative team evaluation data to get an understanding of how students experienced the course. Over the course of my observations, there was considerable overlap in what I was seeing in the teams and the processes described in the model that Robin discovered. For example, task delegation was heavily informed by students' sense of their own skills in the context of their respective teams. I saw teams delegate specific tasks, such as developing CAD models in SolidWorks, to the team member who expressed the most confidence in their skills in SolidWorks. However, what became immediately clear was that there were places in the model that required critical reflection about the role of gendered and race power in engineering teams. For example, we can assume that two students with the same interests, skills, and experiences understand and articulate those skills equally in their teams. We also can assume that gendered and race power dynamics don't inform the team negotiation process. As a result, I began to question and examine how gendered and race power dynamics inform teamwork, but also how students make sense of those experiences over the course of a project. Take, for example, the role of gender in students' understanding of their own skills. At the start of the term, the instructors in the course asked students to articulate both the skills that they brought to their teams, as well as the skills they wanted to develop over the course of the project. One woman offered that she brought no engineering skills, but lots of enthusiasm to her team. However, on reflection during her interview, she noted that she wished she'd had better understood her skills in the context of her specific team, and even connected this experience to broader issues related to women's experiences in the engineering curriculum. During her interview, she said, I think I might have had the same amount of engineering skills as a lot of other people on our team. I took 2 years of CS in high school, but I feel no confident in my CS skills. Later, she went on to say, I think that I am much more likely to evaluate my engineering technical skills as lower than other people with the same technical skills. She later went on to discuss the role of gender in this experience and connected it to broader issues in the engineering curriculum. For example, she noted that she saw far more women in the introductory programming course than in the honors programming course, and wondered if that might be because other women were similarly rating their skills lower. She said, I would never have done the honors course, and the people that I know who did it are just the boys. She noted that no engineering course she was enrolled in had as many women as the introductory programming course that she was enrolled in. In her team, though, This evaluation of her skills played a critical role in the task delegation, as other students who expressed interest in skills in coding were assigned the coding task. Compare that to one of her male counterparts. During the same activity, he said that he brought coding skills to the team and later offered to take the lead on the coding portion of his team's project. However, he later admitted that he had talked up his coding skills, knowing that he might be overstating those skills. During his interview, he said, I knew I wasn't going to be the most experienced coder on the team because other students had taken the courses in the past. Still, some of the coding tasks were delegated to him precisely because he had talked up his coding skills in a way that his woman counterpart suggested she never would have. In fact, she did the exact opposite by playing down her skills. This was just one of the invisible ways that gender shapes students' understanding of their skills and, as a result, task delegation in teams. Gender also took on a very visible role in team dynamics during the team negotiation and task delegation processes. Importantly, students are aware of and at times responsive to known gender processes of marginalization. For example, during one observation, I wrote of a team's argument over a design dilemma. Jessica began explaining her design decision about the placement of the joint. As Jessica was speaking, Charles interrupted to describe his and Rohan's argument. Jessica became exceptionally frustrated by the interruption, and I heard her sarcastically say, I guess I won't get to finish a sentence. During their one-on-one interviews, I asked students about these instances and how they made sense of them. For example, Charles, who had drawn condemnation for his interruptions, recalled, I think she might have thought as me trying to talk over her because she's a woman in engineering, and historically they haven't been treated in the same regard. He later recalled there were a couple times where either Rahman, Rohan, or I were talking, and she would say something to the lines of, don't talk over me. I thought that was really interesting because it was something that I hadn't really thought about. Another teammate recalled instances of interruption for women on the team, and even noted that eventually this led to a conversation. She said that it was particularly frustrating because had been a discussion about listening to women, and that she was particularly sensitive to the issue. We discussed these instances to suggest that students are aware of them, and even trying to address them in their own teamwork. As a result, we as instructors must be aware of and responsive to gender equity issues in student teams as well. Finally, we wanted to address our role as instructors and how students experience and make sense of processes of marginalization. For example, during my observation, I noticed that one particular woman was often on the defense during the team negotiation processes. When I asked her about this during our one-on-one interview, she used the familiar language of leadership and good teamwork. For example, when describing an argument she'd had with a teammate, she said she thought it was good to hear others' opinions, and that she assumed everyone was making decisions based on what was best for the team. And her assumption wasn't altogether unreasonable, and I would venture to bet that most people in the audience here would agree. It's a mark of good teamwork to field feedback and discuss issues openly. Still, what she didn't know was that what appeared on the surface to be markers of good teamwork was often a hidden effort to undermine her work. For example, another teammate shared, I think Victor didn't have a lot of trust in Tara. He would constantly nitpick something she wrote, but it wouldn't be at her, it would be towards me. I was like, it's not me who has to fix it, it's Tara, because it's her work. And you can say it respectfully toward her if you feel that's the case. Other teammates noted that there had been out-of-view conversations that excluded particular team members, and that they could have done a better job of being more inclusive of Tara. That Tara interpreted a process of exclusion as good teamwork suggests the need to apply a critical lens to how we teach and understand teamwork, particularly as it relates to the experiences of women in engineering. We've shared a lot here today, including a model for examining the role of gender in task delegation in teams, as well as some of our reflections and places for expansion on that model. So what are the big takeaways we'd like for the audience? Well, first is that we as instructors have a responsibility to understand the ways often invisible power dynamics are shaping students' experience in our courses, and to make the invisible visible to ourselves and our students. This is particularly important because students are aware of and often responsive to these issues in their teams, and they are shaping the learning process whether or not we respond to them. Though we didn't present all of this data today, we're also learning that students have an awareness of the ways in which sexism appear in their teams. Sexism, for example, looks like men talking over women or men barring women to take part in particular tasks. It appears students and faculty are less clear about the ways in which race and racism affect power in teams, as well as the ways that students living at the intersection of race and gender might experience these issues in teams. We have more work to do to ensure that we are better able to support students who are learning and living at these intersections. Finally, the ways that we think about and teach leadership and teamwork require a critical lens, as it might be the case that these lessons are perpetuating processes of marginalization for women in engineering. With that, we'd like to open the floor for questions, but we'd also welcome questions, thoughts, and comments via email after the session.